When I first started playing Kingdom Rush Vengeance, I loved it. It all seemed like a fitting game in the franchise, with new and fun mechanics that doubled down on what made the game so fun to begin with. However, as I progressed in the game, and specifically when I started the mini-campaigns, the game started to feel more disconnected from its predecessors. And recently, when I finished the game, I was left more disappointed than fulfilled. This game had all the components to make a great Kingdom Rush game, yet it still felt lacking and even flat out frustrating in some parts. If you are a casual player, then you might not have noticed this, or you might have, but at the end of the day, it was not a bad game you just played. But if you're someone like me who really cares about this franchise and have spent a lot of time throughout your childhood playing these games, then you would have noticed that this game was not the same kind of fun as the previous entries. These videos are usually not my kind of area, but I felt like giving my opinion on this game if Ironhide decides to continue this series. If they do, and they keep going in this direction, then I would rather not see another Kingdom Rush. But still, there is some enjoyment to be had in this game. So let's start off with the positives. So after the first game, we have been set in the future, where we fought on the frontiers of Lineara, and we have been in the past, in yet another setting, 60 years before the first game took place. So where do we go next? Well, back to the first setting, but for the first time we are playing as the bad guys, on the side of Westland. However, the power levels have shifted, and King Dennis has full control of Lineara, while you have to fight as the general of Westland's forces and conquer Lineara back from him. A complete reversal of the first game, and a meaningful way to take the plot in, which also makes for a fun game experience. We get to fight familiar faces of allies and control familiar foes. Which brings me to the tower system. It adds a completely new layer to the game without turning everything on its head. You'll still have towers that resemble the main four types of the previous games, while it doubles down on the core of the franchise, which is strategy. It gives you more freedom to explore and play the game how you desire it. The basic / free towers, which everybody has access to, are for the most part balanced, and all have distinct strengths and weaknesses. I will get back to the premium towers later. The same applies to the heroes. The three basic ones are pretty balanced and all have different uses. Olaf's ult is maybe a little too strong, but still there are plenty of reasons to use the other two, in levels where magic damage is not that efficient. It brings back the hero system from Origins, which I don't mind because that system worked really well. And a little minor change is that now heroes have a passive. The boss battles of the main campaign are well made. There are 4 bosses in the main campaign, where 2 of them breaks the traditional formula, which adds variety and are pretty fun and unique. There could have been more to the Cozynez boss fight, other than just waiting around for your cannons to reload. Maybe you could have reloaded them yourself by holding the mouse button on them, which then would force you to clear the waves faster and create a breathing space. That would make it more of an active process, but it was not a huge deal and it still was an unexpected surprise of a boss fight. Lastly, I just want to mention the artwork and the graphics, which all look really good. And I like the new dimensions and backgrounds in the stages, so props to the artist who made this game look way better than any of the other games. Alright, so that was all the positive things I had to say about this game. Let's get to the negatives. Why? What in the why? On a serious note, the first and biggest problem that I want to mention is the upgrading system. Now, I like that you could choose different trees in the reinforcement section. Actually, this has been something I have wanted for a long time, and I would love to see it return in future games. Just maybe one of these splits in all of the categories. But that is all the positive I can say about this. The Pit Lord upgrade and the Soul Echoes are randomly generated, and these make a big difference in how well you do. Not only that, but the Soul Impact also gets cooldown refunded for every enemy it kills, which means that when it strikes twice, you often get it recharged instantly. I guess the developers thought that this would make the game more unpredictable and encourage you to think fast on your feet, but this is not what happens in game. All it does is making the mini campaigns and especially the challenges really annoying to beat. You don't know when you have figured out an effective strategy because you could have just gotten lucky with the abilities and then somehow did really well. But if you then manage to come up with a good strategy, then you're only halfway there, because now you still gotta play the level over and over until you get lucky enough to pass. Most of the time it doesn't even matter if you play the game well, because a lot of the time it all comes down to luck. Your abilities have to be consistent in damage. It is what you rely on and have control over. They are really crucial for you to play well and succeed. I honestly can't make sense of it, because Ironhide has made 3 of these games already and they have not done this before. I don't understand why they would think that this would be a great addition to a strategy game. Introduce a lot of RNG. I don't have a problem with RNG on towers because you don't have control over them, you see. You upgrade them and they do their own thing. But abilities, you 100% have control over them. You yourself decide where to place them. It doesn't encourage you to think quick. You often use abilities to save yourself, and at the end of the day, all it does is punish you for playing well, or that's how it feels. It just makes the game really frustrating, especially when you're playing on impossible and without paid content. Oh, and the Tesla upgrade is terrible. They don't go off half the time, even though the enemy is hugging one side of the lane, and it also feels random how close enemies have to get before it zaps. I just don't trust them. How do you expect me to incorporate these in my strategy? And this upgrade is pretty much useless, and it's the last one, so it's supposed to be good. My hero very rarely dies, because I keep him alive, and again, stop with the randomness. Now the Pit Lord upgrade is not a bad addition to the game, as long as it's consistent when he spawns. This could have been fixed by making it so that he spawns every third time, and then if you were good enough, you could count your reinforcements to know when you would have him, or you could make a marker on the icon, or just throw the idea out and come up with something different. When I had finished the main campaign, I was really excited to see how the boss fights in the mini campaigns was going to be. I expected some really innovative and challenging ones. Okay, I'm sorry, but these are just flat out lazy. How did we go from this to this? The only boss fight out of the 3 that's a little bit interesting is the one on the Rotten Forest. But then again, they don't do anything. They just float around and that's it. None of the bosses has interesting offensive abilities. No spawning enemies, no destroying towers, maybe a little freeze and a teleport, and that's it.
Okay, I forgot that the Winter Queen can spawn shards, which I found out about when replaying it for the footage, but that just proves my point of how forgettable the bosses were.
I thought the main point of a boss fight was for it to be difficult, yet they all have such low HP, and the Frog and Winter Queen don't even have any resistances. I think the fact that I beat all of these boss fights with only barracks my first try says a lot about the difficulty. The post-game bosses in Origins were pretty traditional, aside from Bach Niemann, however you say it, but at least they were all somewhat difficult and memorable, especially Bach Niemann. So when I found out that it was premium towers, I was glad, because I thought that would mean that the game would be really difficult, but I was wrong. Even without premium towers or heroes, this game is really easy. It is not harder than Origins, which would be the way to go since people get more used to the Kingdom Rush formula. There is honestly only a few difficult levels in this game, and the worst part is that it's mostly fake difficulty, because of the luck-based abilities. Like sure, coming up with the strategy is a little bit challenging, but after you've done that, you just have to play until you get lucky enough. Now I've never had a problem with offering to spend a few bucks to make the game a little easier. But when you don't increase the difficulty and add all these extra microtransactions, it just comes across wrong, because there's no reason to buy premium towers, other than it's cool. Because Ical is literally so broken that he makes every level a breeze. The point I'm trying to make is that there's no sweet spot. If you use premium heroes and towers, the game gets so easy that you barely even have to think most of the time. But if you play without, it's really frustrating, because you have to rely on luck. If Ironhide needed more money to profit and finance the games, they could have just increased the price a little. I'm sure most fans of these games wouldn't mind, since Ironhide always delivers good quality games. Well, at least until now. But why is the game so easy and even feels boring from time to time? Well, it's a combination between enemy design, enemy amount and pacing. They don't throw enough enemies at you per wave, and another problem is that the waves comes in too slow. The next wave often pops up when you are already done with the current wave. I recently played Origins to figure out why that game didn't have the same problem, and I noticed that the vast majority of enemies in Origins often have fast or medium speed, and very few enemies are slow. Waves often pops up when you're only halfway through the current wave. This makes for a fast experience where you could get overrun any minute, also because enemies are a lot faster in this game. It adds urgency to the game and keeps you engaged. In Vengeance, it's like enemies are either slow or fast, and very few are fast. This combined with the waves coming in slower makes the game feel boring and slow, and you are often waiting on enemies to approach you, while nothing is happening elsewhere on the screen. Now if we narrow the discussion down to only the mini campaigns, then a counter argument could be that the enemies on the bonus stages are really powerful, and that's why so few are coming. Problem is that as soon as you figure out what to do and how to deal with them, then it becomes really easy when you replay levels. I understand that enemies needs to get stronger with with more unique abilities to keep the game fresh, but give me more of them to fight, or mix them up with smaller enemies to make it more interesting. The difficulty is also really inconsistent on most levels. Often there's only 1 or 2 waves in the entire level that's difficult, which only makes you lose because you've been snoozing for the last 10 minutes playing all the easy waves, and then when it suddenly gets difficult, you get caught off guard. The challenges is a chore to beat. The ones on the main campaign are mostly boring, lacks creativity, or are too easy. Throw some more restriction on it, like no heroes or only a certain level of upgrades. The challenges in Origins often had a fun gimmick or were at least a little challenging. The challenges on the mini campaigns are really tight because they are so short, which is good. The problem is that the ability RNG gets ever more important and it makes it really frustrating to beat. A few of them were fun because they were more about the tower strategy and had a gimmick. The ones that stick out to me are the iron challenges on stage 17, 20 and 25. So some minor things I want to mention before I close is that the game is really buggy, or at least on PC it is. I can't remember how it plays on phone. I bring this up because Frontiers and Origins are actually some of the most bug-free games I've ever played. So I don't know if it's because they released the game faster this time. But anyway, there are only a few game-breaking bugs, which are very rare, and mostly it's just visual bugs. However, there's one bug that occurs pretty frequent. Sometimes when you try to restart a level, the game crashes. But anyway, it's not a huge deal, and bugs in games are expected after all. So when you beat levels now, you get souls. But you get all the souls that a level can give for just simply beating the level. So now it doesn't matter how many stars you beat a level with, because you're gonna get the same amount of souls. Before, I often found myself replaying levels I just played to do better and get 3 stars so I can get more upgrading points, which would come in handy in the early game when I played the game for the first time. I'm not super angry with this, it's just one of those things where I'm like, why? It worked fine before, so why change it? And that's all the points I wanted to bring up in this video. I won't give a number rating to this because I'm honestly tired of it. It's almost like nowadays people can't listen to criticism and points. They just want to hear a number out of 10 and then be like, I would have placed it higher or lower. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I'll put the 4 games on rankings in comparison instead. So in the first place, I put the first game. It's a tough call between it and Origins, but because of nostalgia, the first holds a very special place in my heart. So we'll put it here. And then of course in the second place, I put Origins. Obviously, from a more objective perspective, Origins is the best Kingdom Rush game, because the towers are way more balanced than in the first game, and also the graphics are a lot better. Then there's also the hero system, which is more complete. And then on the third place I put Frontiers. Now a lot of people really likes this game, but when it came out I was not 100% on board with it. But over the years I've grown to really like it, and it's definitely not a bad game. I put it in third because it was a little lazy with reusing the basic tower designs and some enemy designs. They just did a quick recolor and then called it a day. And despite the game starting out really tough, the game as a whole was a little too easy for my taste. Also, Cronan is an inferior version of Alric, changed my mind. And you guessed it, Clash of the Olympics comes in fourth. Sorry, Vengeance. And there should almost be a bit of a space between third and fourth place, because Vengeance is far from almost as good as the other 3 games was. So, what do you think? Do you agree with my points? Was there some positives or negatives I missed? Or do you disagree with some of the points I made? Let me know in the comments. And then I think there's nothing else to say other than I hope you enjoyed this video and that you have a wonderful day. And cheers for the next Kingdom Rush to be a lot better, if it comes.